It's really great having everybody here and having both represented, both two strong women that have had historic careers. Sarah serving as the first African American woman state rep from Lansing, and then serving as the first African American state senator, and the first African American Appropriations chair. A lot of firsts. Angela has fought a lot of tough battles for her seat in Eaton County, and it's really historic to have both appropriations chairs from each chamber representing Eaton County, and we're very lucky to have that. So they're here to talk about the state budget that's been put together, and how it's really going to help uplift Michigan residents going forward, and then talk about specifically a little bit more what they brought back to our. I'll do a little plug for my organization. I work for Future Michigan. We advocate for environmental housing. If you want to learn more about my organization, or my coworker Chad in the back after the meeting. But again, thank you everybody for coming here, and I will turn it over to the representatives.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming tonight. I'm here a lot for official. It's kind of weird actually being up here while the mayor sits right in front of me. And I appreciate everyone being here for this historic kind of debriefing, and I was excited about many of the things, all of the things that we were able to do. So as a state representative and the House Appropriations Chair, my highest priority, as well as the key priority of the new House Democratic majority, was keeping Michiganders safe. I'm proud of the budget that Senator Anthony and I worked very hard on, and the governor just signed it at the end of July, because it reinvests in the safety, health, and well-being of every Michigander. One of the first things we did this year was something that I've been talking about, and it was almost the number one thing I heard on the doors in Eaton County when I first ran in 2018, and it was the pension tax. And I was very proud to be able to work with Senator Anthony and all of our colleagues to repeal the pension tax for all of our retired Michiganders. It's an average of $1,000 more a year, so we were able to cut that pension retirement tax. We also more than quadrupled the earned income tax credit, or you've probably heard people say EITC, to make our tax system more fair for working families in mid-Michigan and across the state. Again, this is a tax for working families in mid-Michigan and across the state. We made sure to accomplish these two important reforms early in the year to lay the groundwork for a balanced budget that returns money into people's pockets. From there, we began a budget that gets more of our state's finest officers on the road by providing resources to graduate 50 new state troopers while increasing the pay of our conservation officers, so every Michigander has the freedom to enjoy our incredible parks and trails. We're also providing support to county prosecutors working in high crime areas, so they have the tools they need to help bring criminals to justice and keep communities safe. And I know both Senator Anthony and I work closely with Prosecutor Lloyd here in Eaton County, and I know this was very important to him. Our investments will help alleviate gun case backlogs and support sexual survivors in their pursuit of justice. However, crime is one threat to the safe health and well-being of Michiganders. PFAS and other emerging contaminants are putting health of our communities and agriculture system in jeopardy. Around the Grand Ledge area, we've been meeting for quite a long time. There was PFAS found in the groundwater around the airport there, and they continue to do the investigations. Our budget invests millions to clean up those contaminated sites to protect Michiganders from harmful chemicals. Our budget will protect vulnerable Michiganders from hunger by appropriating $10 million to the Michigan Agricultural Surplus System program, allowing the Food Bank Council to purchase surplus produce directly from Michigan farmers, ensuring our neighbors are food secure and supporting our local farmers at the same time. This budget also increases support for the popular and very effective Double Up Food Bucks program to feed families in need while allowing these dollars to bolster our agricultural community. In so many areas of our state, especially our rural area communities, which we are in right now, it's hard to find the care Michiganders need to preserve their mental well-being. We're expanding our behavioral health care workforce and providing a wage increase to direct care workers throughout the state to make sure every Michigander can access the care that they need. I'm very proud of the investments this budget makes in our state, from expanding educational opportunities by funding the Michigan Achievement Scholarship to investing in more affordable housing. This budget promises to repair roads and dams, which I was in Midland today looking at their dams that broke a few years ago, to support small businesses and increase access to training in skilled trades. However, there's no mission more important to me as a legislator than protecting Michiganders, and on that account, I'm proud to say that this budget does deliver. I could talk all night about the great investments this budget makes that will improve all of our lives, but I know many of you are wondering what this budget means to us locally, which I've kind of been screaming from the mountaintop, so some of you probably already know much of it. Senator Anthony and I are extremely happy that we have secured funding for some of the following projects right here in our county. There'll be $10 million awarded for the creation of the Delta Waverly Senior Multi-Generational Center. This space will provide a welcoming environment for seniors to interact with their peers, fostering social connections and reducing feelings of isolation and loneliness. Additionally, it will provide a range of services and activities that cater to the specific needs and interests of older adults, promoting their well-being, independence, and overall quality of life. $900,000 will go toward the Eaton County Sheriff's Mobile Command Center. And I believe our sheriff is here tonight. Sheriff Reich was here. Oh yeah, there he is. He's in the back. And the sheriff came to Senator Anthony and I and asked for help to get a state-of-the-art mobile command unit, which will assist the Eaton County Sheriff's Office with deployment of officers, strategic planning, real-time communications, ensuring the safety of officers, tracking the progress of an incident, and much more. $2 million will go right here in Charlotte for the new Sparrow Eaton Cancer Infusion Center. No more will you have to drive to Lansing to get your chemotherapy or any treatment you need for cancer. It will be right here for the residents to be able to enjoy. $4 million, this is something I'm very proud of. I work really closely with the farmers in Eaton County, and the young kids that go through our fair, it's one of the most fun times I have. This year was kind of crazy as a vegetarian watching all the animals go by, but we have allocated $4 million for the first time ever for future farmers of Michigan. It's the state budget invests millions into Future Farmers of Michigan grants to increase our rural workforce and educate the next generation of farmers. Eaton RESA, right here in Eaton County, will be the recipient, and they will distribute these educational dollars that will be sent across the state. If you've ever been to Charlotte High School, they just opened a couple years ago. We cut the ribbon for their new barn that they have for their farming community, and that's what this will be for, is capital projects like that. We're strengthening our food and agricultural supply chains and our food system resiliency to secure Michigan's place as an agricultural leader. I can't wait to see how all these investments pay off. I see other people that benefited, and I believe Senator Anthony will touch on some of those items, and I'm excited to turn it over to my good friend, State Senator Sarah Anthony. Well, good evening. Good evening. Well, you all must not go to my church. It's a very call and response church. It's all good. Thank you for being here. You are a special breed of people that decide to spend a rainy Monday evening in a city hall to talk about the budget. But I will tell you, it's something we've been living and breathing, negotiating, and trying to make sure that we are reaching people, not only in every corner of Eaton County and Ingham County, but across the state. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah Anthony. I serve as state senator for all of Eaton County and the majority of Ingham County. And I remember last year when I was campaigning for this big job, I got a chance to sit down and talk with many of you all and really listen. And this community embraced me in a way that I didn't even think was possible. quiet conversations at coffee shops, at Mexican restaurants, love the tacos across the street. I mean, plenty of conversations that in many ways we carried into the budget conversations, into these negotiations. So what I hope you see in this budget is evidence of those conversations, evidence that, we listened, that we heard the needs. And we know that one budget, two lawmakers cannot do it all, but we tried really hard to utilize many of the dollars from the federal level as well as the state level, and hopefully manifested that into real change in our community. I would be remiss if we didn't just give a little bit of space to acknowledge any of our elected officials in the room. So could you just stand if you are elected by the people of Eaton County or just elected in general, just stand up and just wave. So these partnerships are so important, right? Representative Witwer talked a little bit about, us having conversations with the sheriff, with others. We wanted to make sure that, again, this budget was reflective of the needs of our community. I have a few housekeeping things. One, as I am speaking, if you have a question, a burning question, a conversation you want to spark in the time we have together, we ask that you fill out a card. Who's got the cards on our team? Janita? Yep. So Janita will be going around with cards, and we ask that you fill those out, and then we'll make sure to try to get to as many of them as possible. Now, a part of our jobs as elected officials at the state level is often we get people who follow us around and try to record us and make sure that we say things that are silly or off kilter. So we do have a tracker here tonight. It's the gentleman in the red hat. So we just wanted to make sure that you all knew that there could be portions of our conversation that are recorded. But we will conduct business as usual because we're here to serve you all as our residents. But just wanted to make sure that that was addressed at the top. So there's a few things I wanted to highlight as a part of our budget conversations. And Representative Witwer did an amazing job framing both the statewide priorities that we fought for as well as local. We don't just have these big titles around being approach chairs. We have to make sure that we're looking out for home as well. And so I hope in the remarks that have already gone forth, the remarks that I have here, that you see that we never lost sight of home. So in many ways, this district, and now I'm speaking about Eaton and Ingham County, it really is a microcosm for the entire state. An urban core, right? Whether you're in Delta Township or the east side of Lansing. We've got many rural areas, like Representative Witwer mentioned, right here in Charlotte, and we have suburban areas. And the needs are very reflective of what we see across the state. Things like environmental issues, right? I mean, I know there's plenty of folks who can talk about water quality in parts of our district and parts of our state. We can talk about housing insecurity. I remember having a meeting right here in Charlotte, and we talked about the need for more housing even here in more rural areas, not just high rises in downtown Lansing, but housing options regardless of where you live in our area. We talked about the need for investing in young people. Now, having safe spaces, having productive things for young people to be involved in, making sure that kids had, options after high school. Maybe a 4-year degree, but maybe a 2-year degree, maybe a certification or a skilled trade. We had these conversations, and we were able to deliver on many of those pieces. I'll start with one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, which is education. I've been having lots of visits with people who have, had different pieces of the budget that have become grants. And there's an adage that I've been talking about, that when some people try to figure out how a society is doing across the globe, whether we're talking about a village in Africa, a town in Mexico, or even somewhere here in mid-Michigan, a key barometer is how are the children doing? Are they fed? Are they well educated? Do they see a future beyond what's in front of them? So I ask you, How do you feel the children are doing in Eaton County? That's a real question. How do you think we're doing? Okay?
Doing great. Yeah.
Depends on where you live?
Yep.
So one of the things so there's, and I want to just explain a little bit about the budget. So there's the omnibus, and then there's the school aid budget. We break them up into two big budgets. Now, the K-12 budget, or the school aid budget, was historic in many ways. Now, we won't talk about the increase in the foundation allowance, but there were some pieces that were really important. And I come from an educational background. Representative Witwer served on the school board, so this is something near and dear to our heart. Historic amounts of funding, making sure that if you need more, that you're actually getting more out of the state budget. So we looked at those pieces. We looked at universal school meals, because the reality is hunger does not have a zip code, does not have an income, it does not have a face. So we wanted to make sure that we prioritize every single child in Michigan would have access to meals when they are in school. We wanted to make sure that we address things like housing. So you will see in corners all over the state historic investments in housing. Now, this was money that was not only built into our state budget, but one of the first supplementals that we did in January invested housing dollars, $50 million?
Yes.
$50 million in perpetuity. So this isn't just a one-time shot. We made sure that every time we invested, every year, we would have dedicated revenue designed to help fill the needs related to housing. That's pretty major, because when we build these big factories, when we try to attract all of these new people to Michigan, where do they go? So we did some of that. The problem that we have with housing in not only mid-Michigan, but across the state, is trying to find the sweet spot between affordable housing and quality. So we have some very affordable housing, but the roof is caving in. There's a bug infestation. There's lead all around the house. You can't raise a child in that type of environment. Or you've got quality housing, but it's not affordable. $2,800 for a studio. $1,300 for maybe a one-bedroom that you can barely get on the waiting list. It's not right. So we're trying to address housing from a comprehensive level and making sure that, again, it's in urban, suburban, and rural areas. One of the things that's really important to me, and I see a good friend here that talks about how we support our military and our veterans. You know, the reality is that there's folks who step up and commit their life to serving and protecting the freedoms that we often take for granted. You know, today is 9/11, and oftentimes we pause to think about the sacrifice of first responders. Think about the sacrifice of people who were not drafted, but literally say, I'm ready to serve our country. So when we were negotiating the military and veterans budget, we had that in mind. So we baked in many supports for not only big investments like the Selfridge Air National Guard base, but also services related to mental health, veteran suicide prevention, trauma, access to benefits, right? And I think that that's something that I'm very proud of, because it's been something that I've tried to dedicate my career to as a lawmaker, is always having the pulse of folks who have dedicated their life to serving. Water is something that took center stage in this year's budget. Now, some of you have some really nice water properties around Diamonddale. I won't point fingers, but I've been to your houses. I know that you have really good properties, and we value water here in mid-Michigan. But depending on where you are in Michigan, you may not be able to trust the water that's coming out of your tap. And so we did some significant infrastructure investments in water and sewer, in lead pipe replacement. There's more to be done. We can't pride ourselves on being the Great Lakes state and still having these fundamental infrastructure issues, but they're very expensive.
very expensive. We tried to draw down as much in terms of federal dollars as possible. There's still so much to do. I know there's some unique issues in Grand Ledge and other places, and we're working really hard with the department to try to fix some of these issues. But water really is a human right, and we have to get these things right. There's more that I could talk about, and I know I want to get to some of the local investments, but one of the things that we've talked a lot about is we've not only invested in our state, but we made sure to be fiscally responsible along the way. You know, making sure that we invested in the budget stabilization fund to make sure that when we see some times that are a little bit shaky, and we know the pendulum usually swings. You have a lot of money, and then the money goes away. We didn't want to be in dire straits. We didn't want to use a lot of one-time federal money and then build programs that we couldn't sustain. It's irresponsible. And it's really unfair for the people who rely on those programs. And so we tried to be smart, utilizing as much of the dollars as possible to give an influx of cash and in order for places that really, really needed it, and at the same time put money aside for a rainy day. Many investments in Eaton County. So Representative Witwer pointed to many of them. Today I got a chance to visit a few of the places that we were able to invest. The Eaton Siren Shelter. So this was something that when we saw that there was a need, we immediately took action. It was flagged for us, I think, in May, and we quickly said we have to do something. Again, state funding can't fix everything, but for a one-time investment in order to make sure that an organization like Eaton Siren can continue to provide critical services for people in crisis, that was money well spent, $500,000. The Eden Rapid Teen Center. So I got a chance to hang out with the teens today. I got a cookie. It was cookie dough surrounded by an Oreo. I gained 10 pounds. But it was outstanding to interact with the young people. We were able to invest money in the teen center to provide a safe, productive space for young people in Eaton Rapids. The Homer Mill. Hey, Bob. The biggest piece of blight that greets you as you go into Eaton Rapids. And again, those quiet conversations, it was the number one thing. People who maybe never would have opened up their door for me. Maybe I was running as a Democrat. Maybe they just didn't want to have conversations with politicians. But they said, if you all can go into that Capitol and try to address this eyesore, work alongside our amazing treasurer, work and empower the land bank, real change can happen. It will unlock transformational growth and change in our community. So those were a few of the pieces that we were able to do. The village of Diamonddale also received $500,000 for a community center. These are areas that will outlast any state budget. But with small investments, we were able to look out for people, look out for organizations that otherwise may have struggled. The last thing I will say, and then we can probably start to open up for questions and dialogue, is we know no one budget can do it all. But I think the hope is that we can continue to have conversations between now and when we start this process all over again, which it will come sooner than we know, because these dollars have to be meaningful. We want to make sure that we're partnering with organizations that have the heart of people in mind. And I think that if we keep that as our North Star goal, we can't go wrong. So with that, what did I miss?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Well, we missed the Olivet Fire Department, who's sitting here. Awesome.
So
we were able to touch pretty much every corner in the district, and if we didn't, we will address a lot of the other needs in Eaton County.
So with that, there are questions on note cards, I believe.
No, your note card. You have a question. I got one right here that we can get started with. Are you able to highlight any funding specifically to support local government?
Yeah. Yes. So we were. So I come from local government. I'm a former county commissioner, and we know that revenue sharing covers many of the critical services that touch residents more. So we think about police and fire, local roads. So we were able to invest, and I do not have the specific percentages in front of me, so I'm going to look at your table to clarify, but it was really important for us to do that, to invest not only a sustainable increase, but also an influx of one-time dollars for things like public safety. Again, we're not doing it right if our people are not safe, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel taken care of, if the response times are struggling. But we do know, and I know our sheriff can talk a lot about this because we've had these conversations, we need to do a better job of recruiting people to protect us. Police and fire, the staffing shortages are becoming very dire, and we want to make sure that we're actually lifting people up and lifting the profession up so that way people actually feel as though it is a worthy cause to go into. I just got a little note that we did a 5% ongoing and one-time increase of 2% plus 2% for public safety. So, and that public safety part, as Representative Witwer mentioned, was a huge priority of this budget. That's new. That hasn't happened. And so knowing that we've done those pieces, in addition to things like expanding the funding for the secondary road patrols, for sheriffs, that helps fill the gap for rural populations, like right here in Charlotte. So I hope that answered the revenue sharing and the local investment. Do you have anything else to build?
No, just that it is a big focus of our caucus and of the Senate caucus also. And we're looking at different ways. We're actually we're looking at different ways to fund roads, to fund schools. We've been doing it a long time, and obviously it's broken. And so that we are looking at different ways to structure revenue sharing. Senator Anthony and I have been looking at a kind of an innovative way to look at it, to be able to give more money to police, focus on public safety, and then be able to have a focus on our infrastructure also. So those things are ongoing. These are big changes that need work groups, and so we have challenged the chairs of both transportation and education to take a look at, with these term limit changes, they can actually dive in and spend some time on how we can change funding.
Question here from Troy Bell, or help me out here, about pertaining to taxes around solar upgrades, specifically for cities. I assume, are they taxed on the upgrades themselves that they make solar energy? Look into, I don't.
Don't be shy. We'll just keep talking. So. Yes. Yeah. So if you have any burning questions. We can try.
I think the senator spoke earlier about our focus on housing, and today I was, like I said earlier, I was in Midland touring the dam project, and it's actually a really beautiful city, and they were even speaking about the crisis that they're in because they have one of the largest employers in both between the hospital and Dow Chemical being there. They have a crisis of housing. They don't have enough housing. We hear it every single day. I am actually shocked by how much need there is out there, and it's not just low income housing. For instance, we have the new battery plant going in Delta Township, and they estimate we're going to need 3,000 places for people to live because of that battery plant. And last week when I attended the chamber meeting, the Lansing Chamber holds regional meetings, and they held it in Delta Township. There were 2 houses for sale in the Waverly Schools area. So when you're looking at a need of 3,000 places to stay, and there's 2 houses for sale, they sell within 24 hours. The need is great. I have not seen the package of that. I think it's rather large package. I've seen some talk online about it, but I've not seen the package of bills at all for this particular one that I believe you're talking about, the Renter's Bill of Rights. I have not seen the package.
Yeah, I haven't seen the details of the package either. We met a few weeks ago with organizers for the rent's too damn high. I agree, it is too high. And then they did have a demonstration in front of the Capitol lawn. And what I can say is a few things. I already spoke about the nexus between affordable and quality housing, and so we need to do more there. And some of the investments in the budget will hopefully address some of those pieces. And it's not just about the money that we put aside for new builds. It's also people who want to stay in their current home, but they need a new boiler. They need it to be more accessible. As our population continues to age, how do we right-size these homes to make sure that people can stay in their home and age in place? So I think that there needs to be a comprehensive strategy. Yes, Renters' Bill of Rights. I actually introduced a similar bill last term when I was in the House. But we have to have a comprehensive strategy around housing. And it's rentals, it's making sure people have access to capital to actually purchase their first home. We know when we want to look at closing gaps for individuals and making sure that we have an equity lens, we want to make sure that people can afford their first home. But with the cost of everything going up, it's making it harder and harder for people to do just that. So we need to do a better job of lowering those barriers for people.
Or an energy policy question, but given the threats to our electric grids, are there plans to prevent them from attack or?
So right now in the House, and I believe the Senate is participating in it also, our chair, Helena Scott, is hosting energy roundtables around the whole state. She's been all the way to the UP, all the way to the West Michigan, and then Southeast Michigan. They're right now they're gathering information, they're hearing from the people, they're working with the companies, and we hope to see good legislation that will come out of this. I know the companies, we just went through a huge event here in mid-Michigan. Thanks for coming, Sheriff. We just went through a huge tornado. I went to Detroit yesterday, and it looks like toothpicks are lining the highway when you get to Williamston. And I know Senator Anthony and I spoke almost daily with Consumers Energy and Board of Water and Light. They work constantly in upgrading our grid and getting more clean energy for our areas. So it's a process that is happening right now, and they are upgrading the grids and they are upgrading their systems, both in tree trimming, lines. Anyway, they were all over our district. They gave generators out in Potterville. They were working alongside of us during this. I call it an act of God, but yeah, it was pretty bad.
Big question, road investments, across the state.
Seems like we're fixing them all at the same time. You know, the thing that has kept me up at night is making sure that we're finding balance of not just fixing the 496s and the 96s of the world, but also our local roads. You know, quite honestly, not many. I would be interested to see the statistics around people who actually drive the large highways, you know, every day versus the road that's right around the corner that you have to swerve around in order to prevent an accident or, you know, something terrible happening to your vehicle. And so we did put money into this year's budget for road funding, for bridge bundling. It's not enough. And so as Rep. Witwer mentioned, we need to take a fresh look at the formulas that ensure that the roads that are traveled the least often get the most, and that doesn't make much sense. And so I think that this year's budget was important for us to start having those conversations. We did put sizable investments in, but in order for us to fix this, right, for folks to not see our state as really a national embarrassment when it comes to infrastructure, we have to change our formula. We have to change the way we are funding our roads and prioritizing local roads at the same degree, if not more, than how we're addressing some of the other roads.
About, I believe it's about battery plants, battery economic developments around the state. Any updates on that front?
Sure, I can talk about it. If you are driving the highway into Lansing, 69 into Lansing, it's hard to miss the cranes in the air for the new battery, I think it's Ultium battery plant. In fact, there was money invested in this budget for the roads around that so that it would improve the roads for the residents that live around that area. It will bring 2,000 jobs to the area, and then we also have the one that is very specific for this district. For this part of the district, it would also be easily reachable in Marshall, the new Ford plant. I get a lot of these questions at my coffee hours. That plant is a wholly owned Ford plant. There's a lot of questions that arise out of this, and it is a wholly owned Ford plant. We've been working really diligently in the USA to bring our jobs back here. We gave a lot of our jobs away, and we need to bring them back. We saw a crisis during COVID. We saw the importance of bringing these jobs back, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure Senator Anthony feels the same way I do. We want them here in Michigan. We want all the jobs we can get here in Michigan. And so the Ford plant, I know, is leasing technology so that we don't have the technology right now used in vehicles or in chips. And so they're leasing the technology back. And we're excited that those jobs will be so close to our district, along with the Ultium battery plant in Delta Township. Do you have anything else? So this is, do you care if I'm hogging this microphone? Okay. So I actually worked a lot with Delta. I kept calling them. I live in Delta. My next door neighbor had a tree, huge 150-year-old tree on its roof. The neighbor across the street had one that smashed all the cars. I had one in my house. And I wondered, I mean, I'm older, I'm a senior citizen, and I'm too old. I've decided after lugging a cow in my freezer around to 3 different houses that had it and up and down stairs, I decided I'm too old for all of this. And I was calling about it. There is a state of emergency. What I was told is a lot of those dollars are being used for the overtime that was needed for this particular storm. It was so bad and there were so many people on that a lot of the dollars that were given to cover local governments so that they didn't have to, they weren't paying for this and going deeper in the hole. So the tree part, some of the cities and villages have the ability to be able to do it. When I drove through Diamondale, I was impressed by the amount of trees that were at the side of the road, and they were picking them up. Same with City of Lansing. In townships, it's not that way. So in Delta Township, you could take your limbs to the Players Club, but they weren't picking them up, and it is really hard. So there are people need help, but it was horrible. I've lived here most of my life. I've been through one other tornado that was bad like this, but this was worse than I've ever seen in this area. So are you a township? We can check on it for you, Kern. For sure. I'll check on it for you. Eaton County's here too. I know Eaton County was declared a disaster zone.
Eaton County Road Commission did a great job of clearing the roads. They shifted all the debris in the road right away, and there it sits. When I talked to Eaton County Road Commission about it, they said just simply, well, that's a lot of overtime, and we have no money for overtime, and we don't know where it's coming from. Because they haven't heard from the state either. And that was like 2 days ago, 3 days ago when I called them.
I can ask for you, Kern.
Thank you.
Yes.
Paraphrasing this one, but anything on rural broadband?
We actually oh my God, do you want to answer?
No,
something?
go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So we actually received from the federal government, how many billion? Like $1.3 billion for underserved areas. It came in, it'll be coming in, it might have already came in. It was coming in at sometime in August, and it will be, there's a group that will look at it. There are companies that will bid on it, and it is there so that underserved areas can get upgrades to their broadband. I have a son that lives on, I talk about him all the time, he lives on Dirt Wheaton. He has kids in middle school, and they have a very difficult time getting broadband, and he asks me about it on the way out here tonight, actually. So I hear about it quite often.
50, so in the budget, there's money for 50 new troopers to graduate. We know how many are currently employed. How do we stop police officers from quitting?
I feel like if we had the answer to that question, I think we would hopefully share it with every county government, city government about how to both recruit and retain. I think a part of what we've tried to do in this first budget from both a policy perspective and a financial perspective is actually both uplifting the profession and valuing the individuals who are serving, as well as holding them accountable. In, I believe it was our first supplemental, we, added some money and some additional support for training. And I think that oftentimes when you have professionals that are out there, but the professional development and the training becomes stale, becomes irrelevant, or doesn't live up to the times in which we are dealing with everything related to technology and cultural competency, making sure that when we have officers at the state and local level, that they have everything they need to both perform their jobs and also get home safely. I think some of that is very much making sure that we are uplifting the profession as well as holding accountable. And so I think that we could do a better job of all of those pieces, but I think from a financial perspective, as well as providing those wraparound supports, we're doing the best we can in order to meet the need. But we also just need to be encouraging new young people, new voices, new individuals to sign up to serve. It's still a noble profession.
So we did have $12 million also that is in the budget for corrections officers, for retention for them. And I actually just looked this up the senator was giving you the information. We have We have 3,000 troopers and motor carrier officers, state police in the state of Michigan. And Joe Fidowa, who is our budget director, he and I went recently and visited the state police. It's located in our district, the training center. And they were talking about, they had a full class and they recruit from all over the state, and they take in quite a few people, and they know they're going to lose about a third of them just in training. They live there for 3 months. It's grueling, their training is, and they lose about a third of them, but they're able to recruit classes quite often. I think it's bigger than police. I think it's nursing, teaching. It's a lot of these, what I call service kind of industry. It's a cultural thing where we pay our people that we take care of us. That's how I always say it. The people we need to take care of us, we do not pay and reward them in a way that is commensurate with what they do. So when I was in college, I was a nurse aide, and I talked about how we gave, there's some money in the budget for them. It is one of the hardest jobs I've ever had to take care of people on their last days on this earth. Same with nursing. It is, you are taking care of people when they need you the most. And yet nurses, teachers, the people that are teaching our kids to be the next set of leaders, and nurses, teachers, and police officers, they're not honored and taken care of the way that other industries are. And so it's something that we need to really, as a culture, we need to change those kind of things, and that doesn't help what's happening. So we are doing things in the budget to urge people to be police officers. Because if there's one thing that we both hear at the door, both in the city of Lansing and all over the Eaton County, is people want to be able to pick the phone up and call and make sure they can get a police officer at their house. And twice in the last 2 months, one of my alarms on a window have fallen off, and the police are at my house. And it's something that's very reassuring. So we are doing things to make sure that we have the people that we need on the days that we need them the most.
Got one here, and I'd be happy to, Representative and Senator, if you don't know, I'd be happy to follow up on this. How did the current budget address my half, which is the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund? Will it continue to operate, or will it fade away?
I actually don't know this question, so I'd have to get back to whoever has it. I do want to add on something that you sent me though about the police thing. We have a couple officers in the state house. I don't know. Do you have any in the Senate? But we have a couple former officers. One of them is probably my closest friend. He sits behind me. His name is Tyrone, and he's a former detective from Detroit. And he actually has a bill in the state house for anti-poaching, and it allows for places like Detroit and anywhere to be able to pay for the training of police officers, and then they have to stay there. They can't just leave. So they cannot be poached by a different department, and that has actually helped. I just took a tour and spent a half a day with the mayor of Detroit, and he was telling me that by the summer they will be fully staffed for police officers in the city of Detroit, which it hasn't been that way for quite a long time.
Just quick one, transition back to the my hat pieces. So federal dollars that, and I want to make sure I have a understanding, but I think that this was COVID related dollars to help with rental assistance, past rent, mortgage costs. And I think there was about $200 million that was allocated statewide. We can check the status of where those currently sit. But I want to make sure that we follow up with whoever actually asked that question. But I think that's our limited understanding of that.
We should have brought water with us, for sure.
Jeffrey's again.
Thank you for the question. Well, did anyone who is affiliated with an entity that may have received or are gearing up to receive any of the dollars within the budget or have any just testimonial about the budget. Do you want to say a couple words? Looking at the treasurer. Yeah.
I'm just very appreciative of the amount of funds that have been appropriated toward housing, toward blight elimination, which is what we've been working on. We're currently looking at the mill in Eaton Rapids and wiping that off the face of the earth after 80 years. And we're looking at some additional blight elimination in Sunfield. So this isn't just an urban issue. It is something that touches every corner of the county. And I hope that you will consider continuing some blight elimination funding, because we could go on doing this in Eaton County alone for the next 20 years. And I think it's going to be a big part of that formula that you're working on for housing, rents, we're very appreciative of it, and at the land bank, we're very appreciative of
Thank you, treasurer.
And I know the Commissioner Mott is here also, and he led the charge for this new center that we cut the ribbon on, or we actually broke ground on recently. So there's been a lot of, we haven't expanded everything that we've been able to do for the county, but I know that was something that he and I worked on, and along with the senator, to secure those funds.
It's going to be a huge investment here in the county, and not just the county.
Yeah. I know I can say when I went, I'm glad you were able to go there today. When I went there, one of the kids, I was going to play guitar with them, and one of the guitars was broken, so I couldn't do it. But one of the kids was talking about safety and how they were able to come there and have a safe place to go. And we had questions that day about, where the money came from. I've had people ask me that, and we did have one-time dollars that were federal dollars that had to be spent, or they would have been clawed back. So what you see isn't some, willy-nilly spending. It was focused spending on our communities, and Senator Anthony and I were a strong team for our communities to be able to bring home those one-time dollars for our communities, and it is the first time in history, I believe, that we've ever had both the senator and the state rep as the appropriations chair. So it's been a really good thing for Eaton County, for mid-Michigan actually, because really where goes the city of Lansing too is really important to all of our region. I really have been talking a lot tonight. My voice is starting to get gravelly.
I want to circle back to the renewable energy question. As cost-benefit analysis of part of the threshold
That is really helpful. As Representative Witwer mentioned, there's a few bill packages that are moving through the legislature right now. I'm sure you're probably looking at those as well, and we want to get it right. There's always going to be balance, though. You know, local control, again, I come from a local government perspective. What worked for Ann Arbor may not work for Lansing. What works for Lansing may not work for Delta Township or even Grand Ledge. And so making sure that we're not robbing an opportunity of people who represent communities, right, who were duly elected, that they have the pulse of their communities. And at the same time, we need to be a leader on these pieces. It's not just electric vehicles. It's not just battery plants. We know we can physically feel the impact of climate change. Per the last few weeks when we're talking about these storms, these climate events, you know, when I talk to elders, they say it's never been like this. These weather patterns, what's happening to our, how do we justify not being bold in this moment? And so I hear you. And the governor did a few weeks ago a what's next address. So, and part of that conversation is rooted in your question. So I think we're in the process of right now of investigating concepts. Nothing, at least from the Senate side, has been concretized to the point that they're starting to move. But I will say it's a priority to do something. So those comments will absolutely be brought to at least our conversations. So thank you. Such a quiet group.
I know.
It's nice. Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Certainly appreciative for the grants that we received this past year for firefighters. I think that we're able to buy some new fire trucks and equipment for them. Also, the grant that we received to help fund and beef up our funding for a pension program. Great impact as well for us to be able to do other things. The two that comes to my mind. Certainly have received a couple more federal grants last week for additional firefighters as well as safety equipment for firefighters. We're struggling with the budget as it was, how to keep our firefighters safe. Really having this dividends to have firefighting unit here in Charlotte.
Of course. I know I see him back in the back corner. Tiger came with me to my first 9/11 ceremony, and we worked on getting them fire trucks a couple of years, last year, I think. Was it last year? Yeah.
There were so many fire investments across the state, whether it was, you know, equipment or making sure that fire stations had, you know, facilities for both men and women, right? Over our neighbor, over in Delhi Township, that's how they utilize their investment, is making sure that the female firefighters had adequate facilities. These are things that happen all across the state. But to your point, retention and attracting firefighters, it's an issue. These are the areas that we're looking at: educators, nurses, across the board. So yes, a budget can help with some of those pieces, but we have to fundamentally look at how we are prioritizing those professions very differently.
And we've been asked to look at education program with the sheriff, and it's for paramedics. And we see it everywhere. Delta Township, I'm sure you see it out here in Charlotte. Delta Township used to get 300 applications for every firefighter opening, and now they get four or six of them. And again, it's the education alone to become a firefighter is daunting. It's as much as going into any other care kind of place. So we want to localize it. There are fire stations actually that offer EMT school, paramedic school, in a way that they can get it quicker, because we're in such a need. There's a great need for all these caretaker kind of positions, first responders.
Yeah, if we could get more money for early intervention, maybe cadet programs for fire and police, where we introduce them to it and have them involved even in high school. As they go through, capture some of them. There was funding available to help establish those programs in some of the smaller cities like that would be very helpful.
One of the things that, this was before we were in these positions, that we did was scholarships and services for law enforcement. So that might be something that we look at in a future budget years. How can we do that for fire?
I like that. We also did for full-time, I don't know how many full-time firefighters that you have here, but there was a set of second gear for all full-time firefighters across the state. And it was quite it's $15 million investment in just that, so they don't have to wear contaminated. There could be PFAS on their clothing, and so it's a way to be able to trade out their clothing. Usually they only have one set of gear, and so this was able to give firefighters a second set of gear.
So we don't need a formal budget town hall to receive feedback about the budget. I think Representative Witwer is known statewide for being accessible in every corner of the district. I work really hard at it, with this being a bigger district and a newer community. But I cannot stress enough how many of the conversations and concepts in one-on-one coffee hours, town halls, conversations at the grocery store made it into this year's budget. And so I think, I don't want to prematurely wrap up, but I see like we're kind of scraping for questions at this point. So I wanted just to, one, thank everyone for being here. Two, we'll be at this again next year. Spending months and months researching, having conversations, figuring out which problems we can honestly try to solve, or at least try to address with limited funding. And so please reach out to us. We are accessible. We try to make sure that we are uplifting your voices along the way. Our offices are also really accessible. I just want to make sure that we acknowledge our teams. So sitting at the table, we have Andy Solon, who's the Senate's budget director. We have Joe Fidoa over in the House as budget director. My chief of staff, Janita Moore, is also there.
Josie,
yes.
Josie.
I
If
know
you
the
ever
last name.
call my office, Josie is amazing, and she works with many people in our district.
Yeah.
And she's always with me.
Josie, what's your last name again?
McMichael.
That's what it was. I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong one. And then I believe Jeremy Frazee and Remy Gelderloos are also out in the front, taking information. We do not, if you share your email with us, we will not blow up your email. But it is really helpful for us to share information about events that are coming up. When the storm hit, we were able to provide emergency resources pretty quickly to our constituents, as well as legislative updates. This is our official stateside work, and so we never campaign using those emails. So if you are comfortable and would like to receive additional information, possibly follow-ups from questions that we address here today, it might be worth sharing your contact information.
And I just want to just quickly thank you, Michael, for letting us use your space. I appreciate it, and everyone from Charlotte. And then Michael told me that our new interim manager is here right now. So Troy Bell is here from Charlotte, and it's really good to have you here. And congratulations. So it's an exciting time, I know, here in Charlotte and all over the district. And I can't believe how many people came out either. I'm kind of shocked. And I want to thank everybody. And I have coffee hours almost every Friday, and we should have one together actually and get a crowd like this together again. But we do work really hard in the office too. And if you're ever in the Capitol, both of us greet anyone that comes because we're a local person. So you're welcome to come in. We can give you a tour of either one of the chambers. It's a pretty cool place to visit. Very cool place to visit. But thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.